Well, alrighty, welcome back to another episode of Generation to Generation, Bridging the Gap with Rex
and Eva.
And we are so excited. Strap your seatbelt on.
Yes, I want to give you a fun fact every episode, or like for many episodes, because I want to find something else to say other than excited. I'm like, no, the excited is the best part of our intro. And so I'm glad that you're now embracing the excited part.
I am embracing the excitement, the energy, the enthusiasm.
That is flowing from us at 9 o'clock at night, and we haven't had dinner.
Oh my gosh, second night in a row. We had to can last night's episode.
And the one we just recorded.
And the
before
one
this.
we just recorded because we haven't had lunch, we haven't had dinner, we're off schedule. We don't have interns checking our facts. We don't have a lot of notes, by the way, for those of you that are interested. We don't do a lot of note taking before we do an episode. We just kind of say, hey, it's time to record one. What do you want to talk about? And we're scratch out just a few
like 5
notes.
minutes before we hit record.
Exactly.
And
So we
that
are.
episode was just not flowing great. So we're moving on to a new one.
We are
rather than
moving on
keep
to a new
trying.
one, but just to whet the appetite for the audience, the one that we're tabling.
Yep.
And you know what that means.
Yes, I do.
You're
I do.
temporarily
I know
putting
what
it
that
to the
means,
side.
yes.
Yeah. Not everybody in your generation does,
No.
though. That
No.
comes, I think, from Robert's Rules of Order. If you table a motion, that means you cannot come to an agreement.
Yeah, we
and
couldn't
so
come
you
to an
table it.
agreement on that episode
But
because
that
we were taking it in
episode
two separate directions.
Yes, but it was about a riveting topic.
Riveting.
The French Revolution.
Yes.
Because it's one of the periods in history that you're really
It's my
fascinated
favorite.
with.
I like comparing it to our own modern day circumstances, but you like the actual. Here tidbit. We don't agree on every episode, and we often do fantastic and can discuss them great. But this one, I wanted to talk about more of the comparison between the French Revolution and modern day. And he wanted to talk more about just the French Revolution as a whole. And so we kept going down rabbit trails, and we were 45 minutes into an episode, and we didn't even know where we started. And so we tabled
and
it.
it just didn't flow well because,
didn't.
to be honest about it, because you like to draw the parallels
I do.
between the French Revolution 200 years ago
And the modern day.
and the modern day application of it, which I think is fantastic. But the more you talked, I was like, oh my gosh, she's going to break out a guillotine any minute.
No,
And-
I'm not going to start a war, but it's just like there's a lot of similarities. And that's when he had asked me about that episode. He was like, well, what is your favorite time period in history? And I had said that. I had said everything I wanted to say. And Mama was like, that's fantastic. You should say that. And then I say it on the podcast, and you kind of shut me down and turn it around and go somewhere else. And I'm like,
Which
fine.
always throws you off.
It does.
However, we're going to pivot tonight.
Yes.
And instead of the French Revolution, which we have tabled, we are going to do a quick conversation about how rapidly things change from generation to generation. And I'm going to give a little context about my dad's life, Paul.
Mm-hmm.
Then we're talking about mine a little bit, but I really want to focus in on the changes that you've experienced in your generation. But just for context, my dad was born in 1923, which also, by the way, is one of your favorite historical periods.
It is, the
You
Prohibition
love
era.
Prohibition era. Yeah.
It's
and so
one of my favorite times. I'm a big Great Gatsby fan.
Yeah.
So I love that era, but I also love the history of it. Fun fact, I'm going to stray a little bit. I said this on the first recording of the French Revolution. Did you know that the reason we have expiration dates on stuff was because of head gangster Al Capone? Because
Al
his
Capone.
niece got sick from drinking bad milk, and he had so much influence and power throughout the city that he made it, or he petitioned for it to be a law that they had to do research on when food went bad and put expiration dates on things. And he is the reason that we know when food goes bad.
Yeah, so thank you to the Chicago Mob Syndicate
Yes.
for expiration dates on our
Yes.
food.
But that's from the Prohibition era.
And again, we talk about history that you have to put it into context. You know, we always say if you don't like history, well, that's probably the result of not having a active history teacher that really told you the significance of events, the human interest stories, how they interrelate with each other, and they just kind of threw out a bunch of facts and figures and dates. And nobody likes that. So I always try to put things in context of the timeline. And so anyway, again, the fact that you love Prohibition and that era and some of the things that happened, I think that's cool, but it puts it into context when we say, oh yeah, by the way, that was the decade that your grandfather was born. And so he was an infant during the time frame that you like to study about. And he was just beginning to develop his journey, so to speak. The Depression would come along in 1927. Paul would have been 4 years old when that hit. And so I just think about his life and what he saw.
Wait, he was born in 1923?
1923.
That's when Walt Disney's animation company was founded as well.
Precisely. See, you have the proper context of history. So think about that.
That is crazy. So what are some things that happened in his life that changed rapidly?
Well, one of the biggest thing.
How many years did he live?
He lived 91 years.
So that's what?
2015.
15, yep. Okay.
Yep. And so, and he was always fascinated about the amount of technological change that he had seen in his lifetime. And I even calculated it up one time that Paul had lived, I think, over 40% of America's history at that time as a nation. Wow. Think about it. You've personally witnessed, to a degree, almost 40% of the nation's history. And transportation is really the big one that jumps out to my mind, because when Paul was a boy, he lived in rural Arkansas, lived in a farming community. And I can remember him talking about they went for days in the early 1920s without seeing an automobile. Every family did not own a car. They very rarely saw one. And then think about this. He went from rarely seeing a car as a boy to watching America put a man on the moon in the late 1960s.
You went from barely ever seeing a car to seeing spaceships actually work.
Exactly. So that's got to be mind-boggling when I think about Paul's life and the things that he saw and the things that he had to wrap his mind around. It's pretty phenomenal. And I can remember trying to explain to him how cell phones work and microchips in computers, especially when laptops became really popular, and thumb drives. I remember showing Paul a thumb drive for the first time and telling him how much data was on that thumb drive. I'll never forget the look on his face. He just looked at me and said, "Son, I can't even comprehend that." Well, I get it, because that's so far outside of what was normal for him. Well, let's put it into my generation that I come along in 1960, and what's some of the biggest changes that I've seen in my lifetime, because I spent 22 years in the Army. Here's the biggest thing I think of. When I entered the Army, we were still doing manual computations on most weapon systems. You had what was called a tabular firing table. It would tell you the elevation that you needed to put an artillery tube at in order to attain a certain range. Wow. And you had what was called a range deflection protractor on a great big sheet of plywood, and you had these pins that you were putting in a map. And we used to have something called a TI-59, Texas Instrument Calculator.
I have a TI-84.
Yes.
Except it cost like $150, and I've never used it.
Well, we had the initial, very small version of that, and we were just starting to do some initial calculations with that TI-59. But the bigger point is almost everything we were doing with weapon systems and firing, especially of artillery, was manual. By the time I left the Army 22 years later, we were simply pushing buttons. And the weapons themselves, based on satellite, GPS, the weapons themselves knew where they were positioned on a map, and they were computing firing data on their own and firing the rounds. So think about it. And that was just in 22 years. So I saw this rapid development. The internet came along.
Cell phones,
Cell phones came along.
colored television,
Colored television. What else?
GPS,
GPS.
streaming,
Yep.
loss of cable.
Yeah, because we used to have 3 television networks, and that was it. You've heard me tell the
And
story.
now we have like 7 streaming platforms.
My God, it's
and
nuts.
it is. And everybody's like, oh, cable's so expensive, so we get streaming. And then when you have all your streaming, it's the same price as cable.
Right.
But you get instantaneity, which that I feel like is what our whole generation
Instant what?
Instantaneity.
Instantaneously.
There's the word. I've said that word like 4 times while we were discussing this. Didn't get corrected once. Then we start recording and he finally corrects me on it. But
well, I caught it because it's 9 o'clock at night, and I'm like, okay,
Anyway, we are in a generation with no patience, but I also want to, because I mean, if you think about it, if it takes 30 seconds or something longer for something to load, you're like, oh, why is this busted? Like, why is the buffering? You get so mad when your Wi-Fi goes out because you can't watch anything. Wi-Fi is something that y'all have now that y'all didn't have.
Teams, MS Teams. We just made the transition to MS Teams. I actually like it, but it is a change because everything is functional and kind of interfaces with Teams to include your Outlook calendar, Zoom. There's no longer really the Zoom platform. MS Teams has its own video application. And so it's just kind of crazy. Yeah.
It is.
Everything's rapidly changing.
But there's this collective in my generation of people realizing, oh, wait, we don't own anything. We don't, if our cellular networks decide to stop working, well, we lose access to our phones. If our Wi-Fi stops working, we lose access to our computers. What's on there? People are like, oh, put it on your computer. It'll be good forever, like your photos and stuff. But what happens if those don't work? There's no more printed photos. People aren't printing photos anymore. They're sending their photos into a company that's printing the photos for them and then sending them back to them, right? There's no more owning DVDs or CDs. Owning vinyls have now become like this like not fad, but like
it's kind of a retro throwback.
It's like, and if you own vinyl, you have money because they're so expensive now. It's like I pay somewhere between $30 to $50, and I just display them. Like I don't even listen to them because I use Spotify, which is completely ridiculous. But it's like movies. We have probably 30 DVDs, but none of them are probably newer than like 2016. One of my favorite movies, right? Can't watch it anymore. Not on a streaming platform in our country anywhere. Like we don't own anything. If your favorite show gets taken off Netflix, well, good luck finding it because you got to pay for a new streaming platform now or all of these things. We don't own anything. We have no physical attachment to entertainment that we love so dearly and give so much of our money to. And it's just absolutely wild because if a company shuts down one day or our internet goes out, you lose everything.
I'm kind of chuckling as you're talking about this because when I was your age, we started with what were called 8-tracks. Yeah. Have you ever even seen an 8-track?
You've showed me one.
And
I also think I know of it because of Guardians of the Galaxy. But that may be a cassette player.
That was a cassette player.
But
well, the 8-track predated the cassette player, and it was a little bulky. It was kind of a little square, and you put it in an 8-track player. Yep. Well, then the cassettes came along, and man, we thought that was the greatest thing since sliced bread, so to speak.
You used cassettes in your Camry.
I
did.
For
a long while.
And check it out. Speaking of the Camry, which I still drive, by the way, it's got 513,000 miles on it. It's been around 30 plus years.
Older than my youth pastors.
Yeah, but check this out. The Camry has this was really high speed at the time it came out. It had a dual cassette DVD player. No, CD.
If you could see me right now, I have a really sarcastic look on my face because the car I grew up in, Mama's Pacifica, had a 6-track DVD holder that held 6 movies for our DVD
at one time. And boy, did we use that.
Oh my gosh. One of the movies I watched the most in the car was Muppets Most Wanted. I rewatched it recently. Mama had never seen the movie, but she could quote it entirely because we had listened to it hundreds of times throughout my childhood.
Absolutely. And the
One of my
other
favorites.
one was Cars. Yes.
Cars. Okay, unpopular opinion, Cars 2 is a fantastic movie. People like to hate on it, but it is fantastic. But nonetheless, I have grown up in a generation where we have so much technology. And I mean, the generation after me, Generation Alpha, they have even more technology than I do. I mean, I didn't get my first like gaming anything. I mean, like a little leapfrog one, but like the first one until I was like 13, and that was a Nintendo Switch. And I got it right before COVID happened because I wanted to play Animal Crossing, which I have not touched since COVID. But then we moved up here, and we were like, okay, well, let's get a TV. It's football season. We're here on Fridays.
Madden.
And no, first we got the TV because we wanted to watch football. And then as we were moving, he had a board game called Monday Night Football. That was the Madden before Maddens. you would put your like play track in the thing, and then you would slide a dial on either side and then press a light button, and it would tell you how many yards gained or lost or
And you loved it.
Love the game. And so when we moved
And
up
that's,
here,
oh, but yeah, by the way, what year did that game come out?
70s.
I think it was
Okay.
1971. So that tells you how old that game
And it
is.
still works.
But I was blown away that you loved that game.
Okay.
And we still
and
have
this is
it.
completely honest. I did not understand football until I played that, and I played Madden because we were in the store. We were in Walmart buying a TV, and there was like one of the Xboxes was on sale or something. And I was like, we should get one and play Madden. And like, I want an Xbox.
That's how you suckered me
Well,
in, by the way.
It was.
You sold me on the
But
idea of
a lot
Madden.
of friends play Xbox, and the way we stay in contact with each other is by playing video games. And they had Xboxes, and it was very difficult to play video games with them before I got an Xbox because we really could only play Minecraft because that was the only one like cross compatible. And so I was like, this is fantastic. I can play with like Bella and Christian now. And you were like, fine, let's get it. We got Madden. Loved it. We played it. We've played it a ton. I understand football now because of it, which is completely wild. Love football. So excited for college football to start back.
That's a great memory too, by the way. We were talking
there was
the
like
other
nothing
day.
in our house.
Yeah,
except
at that
like
point.
2
We're talking about
couches,
when
an
we
air
first moved to
mattress.
Birmingham.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then we had this massive TV and Xbox, and we spent every night playing the Xbox or watching movies or watching football because...
And to the point that we're talking about, I was stunned at how good the graphics were on Madden because, again, the last time I played any type of football game was the 1970 version of Monday Night Football. And then all of a sudden, fast forward literally 40 years, and we've got Madden. I was blown away at how incredible the graphics are.
It's wild.
We need to break that out. We hadn't played Madden
I had
in a while.
to uninstall it because it took up like 50% of the storage space on my Xbox. So I have to re-download it. But nonetheless, albeit, so be it. Whatever. I don't know the proper conjunction to use there, but
great memory.
He will come sit upstairs when I'm playing video games, and he's like, this is like a movie, how smooth it is. He'll come watch me. He'll have no idea what I'm doing. I'll be playing like Hogwarts Legacy or Battlefront or something, and he'll be like, wow, like look at how the crowd moves or the trees move. I'm like, I know, this is crazy. And it's so much fun. I love video games from the aspect that I can connect with I'm terrible at video games. Like absolutely awful at them. Ask any of my friends who I play with. I am the worst player on the team, but I have so much fun on them. You don't want me to play with you if you're let's always win kind of person. I'm more of like I'll die 15 times, but I had a blast. So, but like music is another great thing. You had what was it called? An 8-track, right?
Yeah.
I had a little radio player when I was a kid, but now I just use Spotify. Like I don't listen to like the radio in my car. I have Sirius, but I never use that because I just plug my phone in and listen to Spotify. And it's the funniest thing because the kids I nanny, I've got them to fall in love with music too. So much so that their parents now like the music I listen to. One of them is Paper Rings by Taylor Swift. Every time they get in my car, they go, Miss Eva, can you play the Ring song, the Taylor Swift song? And I'm like, yes. And then they'll see a song come on the radio and they'll be like, my mom listens to this song. My mom loves this song. And they'll sing along with it and everything. And it's the sweetest thing. But if Spotify disappeared one day, I would have no music.
Yeah, and to that point, I can remember, all we did when the 8 tracks went out, we just went and bought the same music again in cassettes. And then we went and bought the same music again with CDs. And so anyway, it's just kind of cool to think about the evolution of all this, how quickly technology changes. And for your generation, you being born in 2006.
Which was when the first iPhone came out.
Yep. And just think about the iPhone itself. What version are we on? 15?
Yes.
I think we're on 15.
I have the newest.
16
so
is
16 comes
probably
out in
getting
the next
ready to
couple
come
of
out.
weeks, yeah.
But
And did you know that is the last iPhone they're making?
I did not.
They said that after the 16, they're going to start rebranding it because they're running out of ideas for the iPhone itself. And so they're like, because I mean, we've all said it. It's the same iPhone with a better camera or more camera or same phone. And so they're changing it up and they're changing their approach on making phones after the 16, which is just wild that I've grown up with iPhones going from being this little brand to, in America at least, and everywhere else in the world, they're still pretty big on like Android, Samsung, but in America at least, if you don't have an iPhone, people don't like texting you.
They don't.
Nope.
'Cause it's the green box.
Text, and you lose all of the features that iPhone has.
And for me, I don't know really, I can't explain this, but I think it's maybe just due to the fact as I've gotten older, I hate extra things to carry around. I don't even like carrying keys in my pocket.
When he carries my key around, I have keychains on it and stuff. I've had to like make my keychains where he can take everything off of it in one go, because otherwise he just won't carry my keys.
Yeah, you have live animals on your keychain. I'm like, what is all of this?
It's fun.
Not really, but you have stuffed
I
animals.
have so much on my keychain because women's clothing doesn't have pocket. Women's clothing is not functional, period. And so I'm a master of the claw, where you hold everything and between your fingers. And so my keys have my wallet. They have, I don't even have anything like any keys on it other than my car key. And
and to that point, I cannot stand to be encumbered by a bunch of extra stuff.
Like you
so
won't carry a
years
backpack
ago,
around?
I won't carry a back. I have one. Very seldom.
He won't really ever put it on his back. He'll just carry it by the handle.
Very
like a
seldom
briefcase.
do you see me carry it. Very seldom do you see me carry a laptop.
Yep.
I have a laptop here at home. I have one at work. But my point is the iPhone enables me to take all of my personal notes on the note section.
He does so much work just from his iPhone.
I do.
It's incredible. It's its own little computer.
It is. And so again, that's kind of the rapid pace of technology that we're talking about and the changes that I am going to continue to see in my life. But for you, when I think about the changes in Paul's life, the changes in my life.
Where are we going to be in 7 years?
Where are we going to be? But, we talk about, colonies on Mars and stuff like that. And you're like, no way.
I don't
okay.
Hot take. Sorry.
Did I hit a hot button?
You did hit a hot take button. First off, I think it's completely, I'm saying it, stupid that we are spending all this money to try and go to Mars. Like 90% of our oceans haven't been explored yet. We're trying to go to Mars to try and find cures for cancer. Look at our oceans. There's so much there. Why are we trying to go colonize another planet when we haven't even finished exploring our own? And also, from the biblical standpoint, God gave us dominion over our earth. If we're just escaping to go to another planet, are we really expressing dominion over our earth? Why not fix the problems that are on it rather than run to somewhere else?
You just opened a whole nother can of worms, and I love it.
That can be its own episode in itself.
That's another episode, but I love it.
Nonetheless, I think it is completely... I like the idea of going to the moon, right? Because that's like within our gravitational circle. But like exploring another planet, I'm like, explore our oceans first. How much is down there that we don't know about? Let's actually successfully get a trip to the Titanic. Why are we sending people to space when we have all of these sunken ships? Like, I mean, think about how much history and treasure is lost in the bottom of the ocean from wars, and when the pirates of the South, but also like the Vikings. Think of how much history is just at the bottom of our ocean, and we aren't using our resources to explore that.
Interesting.
So that's my hot take.
Yeah.
That would be a good
podcast.
podcast.
I didn't realize I was going to hit hot button when I said that.
Yep.
So really, I think we can kind of wrap this episode up. We have been successful at kind of staying on track in terms of how rapidly technology changes. And, I'm excited,
I am
because I
too.
think sometimes we can get overwhelmed with the amount of change, the pace of the change. But what an exciting time that we live in.
Yep.
And to your point, I personally believe God chose us to live
Exactly.
in this specific time frame for a specific purpose, for a specific mission. And so let's embrace whatever changes are coming.
Let's drop the back in my day sayings because we're not in your day.
Yeah. And by the
exactly.
way, that's
We can
straight
em-
out of the book of Ecclesiastes.
Like we can embrace the fact that history looked different, but by saying, "Oh, I won't do that because back in my day everything ran just fine." Yeah, but we're not in your day anymore,
We're in this day.
We're in this day and
Yes.
embrace this day and every day to its fullest. And if you're constantly living in the past, you're not experiencing the present in the way
And the
It
book,
should be.
yeah, and to make it scriptural, the book of Ecclesiastes says that. I can't remember what chapter.
Yep.
I'll have to have my intern look it up, but I
Our
think it's
phones.
roughly chapter 9, 10-ish.
Yep.
That says, hey, quit talking about the way things used to be
Yep.
because it's unproductive. Let's talk about today
If the Bible
and the
didn't
moment.
want change, if God didn't like change, he wouldn't have brought so much change in the Bible. But think about how much change is in that. We have to embrace it because we are always meant to be intellectual. If God didn't want us to be changed, we wouldn't be intellectual creatures that wanted to explore and answer the question why. And through answering the question why, we make so many discoveries that benefit our own life, even if you don't agree with them. And you just have to embrace that.
Yeah,
So,
embrace change. But let me caveat that too. There is a verse in the Bible that says, I am the Lord God and
sure.
I change not. So
He is unchanging.
He is unchangeable. But the world around
Yep.
us, it also says there's nothing new under the sun.
Nope.
We've talked about that. History repeats itself.
Yep.
But to our point tonight, things change. They change rapidly. We have to embrace it. And again, I'm excited about the future.
I'm going to make a funny joke. I'm
Okay,
sorry.
bring it.
But we don't like change, but we wouldn't be able to go anywhere if it wasn't for the Phoenicians creating the wheel. They created the wheel, right? Or is it the alphabet?
The alphabet.
The alphabet.
Yeah.
Because we couldn't read without that. We wouldn't have a globalized, but whoever created the wheel either. Think about how big of a change that was, now having an easy way to move things, and yet we now use them in our everyday life. Every single thing in our life has probably been created or functioned some way with a wheel or used a wheel at one point, but that was a huge change at their point. And so progress doesn't happen if you don't embrace change.
Yep, absolutely.
But that was my funny joke, but then I got my history wrong, so I apologize for that. It is also 9 o'clock at night and I am starving, so we're gonna leave it here.
Yeah, we are going to leave it right there. I think that is a successful episode here at whatever time it is, 9 o'clock. Is it 9?
It is 9 p.m.
Oh my gosh, it's time to eat, girl. And I am so sorry. They're going to think, man, this guy's a terrible parent.
He is a fantastic father. Please don't think that it's actually my responsibility to cook, and I've been falling behind on that, and so it is my 9 o'clock at night. So,
But we are still, to your earlier point, because you homeschool, our school year has not started yet.
not started yet.
So we've got a couple of weeks to go, and we've got to get back on a better schedule. We will. And so change. We're going to get on a changed schedule. So in the interim, let's always be able to talk from generation to generation.